turn now. My name is Reagan, or Ray, or whichever you prefer, and this will be my first video on YouTube. I meant it to be my introduction video, but that one was taking so long, so this will have to do in the meantime. So have you ever made something, and then you step back and look at it and just go, ugh? I sure have. A few days ago, I made an art piece I was extremely unsatisfied with, and I wanted to fix it. So for the first time, I, a somewhat experienced Clip Studio illustrator, will be trying out the comic format today, and I wanted to bring you all along for that journey. If you want to watch this purely as a tutorial, I've timestamped each tool and feature I went over in the description, so if you're looking for something specific, you can find it fast. Fair warning, I am going to treat you like idiots because that's what I want out of tutorials. I like it when people are extremely specific when giving me a task, otherwise I'll get hung up on something and just crumble. Now for the rest of you, on with the video. I posted a piece of fan art per usual, but something about this one felt different. I was really unsatisfied with the way it looked, and there was this feeling gnawing at me saying I could do better. So this is not a years later redraw, this is a 2 days later redraw. One 4 to 5 hour drawing and one 10-hour one. I can't teach you everything about this program because it was my very first time trying to make something in Clip Studio's comic format, but I can teach very, very new beginners, such as myself, what some of the buttons are and hopefully save you the Google searches. As always, I learned a lot when I was forced to try new things, so hopefully this may answer your questions if you're as confused as I am. So off screen, I tried to play around with the paneling tool. I saw ABD Illustrates using his video about this program to make manga, but I couldn't figure out how to get the two panels to show up together on screen. I like that they were made separate layers, I just wanted to be able to look at them at the same time when I was drawing. So I ended up using the Direct Draw Rectangle tool to make the panels. It's the button that looks like a diagonal line, and you simply select, click the canvas, and drag. A lot of buttons work the same or similarly to that. You can see me changing the layer names, which is right-click on the things that says Layer, go to Layer Settings, then change layer name. I find no need to put my layers in any folders, but if you want to, the button is here right next to the new vector layer. I'm using a raster layer, which means it's pixelated, but if I wanted to use a vector layer, I could change things like the thickness of my lines. I personally recommend using raster layers because I find it easier, but if you want to try out vector layers, go for it. To pull up a reference, I used Subview and clicked on this button that looks like a folder, then simply chose the old art from my files. To make it bigger, you can click and drag it like I did. My next struggle was with the brushes. The darker pencil usually shows up grayer and kind of transparent in illustration, but shows up completely black in comic format. This is because comics are sent to monochrome. To fix this, you go to Layer Properties, click on Monochrome under Expression Color, and switch to color. I then do this for all my layers. You may notice I tried changing the opacity before doing this to try and make it look like the darker pencil, which you do by moving that slider back and forth. To make his head smaller rather than just redrawing the circle, I clicked on the button that looks like a calligraphy pen, Selection Area, and used Selection Pen just by drawing around the places I wanted moved, then shrinking and moving them as I pleased. For your viewing pleasure, I'll just put on screen the names of most of the buttons. I haven't really gotten to talk about the drawing much, so this is fan art for To Love Them, To Love You, a Janka fanfic by Sleepy Remy. Janka? If you want to go read the fic, it's in the description, but this is the basic plot of it. It follows Zanka and Jabber, two characters from the anime Gacha Yakuta, being very protective over each other's jinkies/vital instruments, basically items that are important to them. Zanka ends up killing a guy who shot Jabber and stole Mankira, his vital instrument. Kathoni, an older character who looks after Jabber, sees Zanka reeling from his first kill and remembers Jabber saying Zanka liked praise, so she gives him a pat on the head. He blushes, it's adorable, and I just had to draw it. I wish I could have drawn more from this scene, but I have other projects in fan arts to work on, so I'll have to settle for some small sketches, which I'll put here. I pretty much decided on a whim to make the line art blue. I was just thinking that I wanted the panels to be blue and then thought of that. Sort of like the only good part of No Game, No Life, whose line art is all red. I really liked the look of it, but the way the art turned out, I did not like at all. In the new version, I kept the format mostly the same, but pulled back on the panel to on the left. I wanted you to be able to see the angle that Zanka was at, and the houses behind Kathoni and Zanka, and more of Zanka's pose. This time I decided to draw the clouds behind them more cartoony, because for some reason the clouds in the last drawing looked really childish. Maybe because it was next to the flat-colored roof, or that I didn't draw more transparent clouds alongside the big white puffy ones. I think my mistake on the first try was just rushing too much. I got it done really fast, but it didn't like the look of it. That's not to say time saving is bad though. If I wanted, I could have used the asset brushes, which you can find either in the decoration button or more under this Q looking button. With those, I could have saved time manually on drawing clouds, skies, tiles, houses, you name it. If the ones in your folder aren't doing it, you can download assets more to your liking from Clip Studio Assets. Being on a time crunch and having to use shortcuts doesn't make your art more or less better than anyone else's. You can see at some point when I started on the line art for Chthoni, I accidentally used black instead of blue. To fix this, I select the area, make sure the color wheel is set to the shade of blue I want, go to Edit, and select Convert to Drawing Color. I used the balloon tool to create the speech bubble, and I couldn't figure out how to make it transparent like I wanted, nor how to make the lines colored, but maybe this is just a problem with my computer. It was getting pretty roasty-toasty while running this, so I think I'll mostly stick to the illustration format after this. The text tool also gave me problems, as I couldn't figure out how to color that either, but maybe I'm just stupid or my version of the program is too old. It looks very different compared to the newer program I have installed on my new computer, which I'm too scared to use yet. Onto the coloring, I like to do my coloring manually, but I tried out the lasso tool this time, and it did save time on large sections. I'm not really sure if I'm using it properly, but I just drew a rough outline and then filled in or erased the color as I pleased. Speaking of filling, if you use the fill tool, it will leave these little white edges sometimes, and a way to combat that is to fill it again, but that can make the edges thicker, so it can cause coloring outside the lines. I recommend drawing on an outline of color an inch away from where you want it, filling it twice, then coloring in the gaps. And also, if coloring is going everywhere and not where you want it, that means one of your lines has a gap in it. It's like the difference between a circle and a half circle. The circle is going to fill up with color while the background remains white, but the half circle is going to make everything that color because there's a gap. Unfortunately, my cats are fighting. Unfortunately, I lost the screen recording for all the work I put into Chthoni's portal, so now it's just lost to the ether. From screenshots I took of it, it looks like it took 30 to 40 minutes. I used the distort tool to select a few lines of color, making them more or less wavy using the slider, then positioning them to where I wanted them. I also filled in places like the edges with just straightish lines of color without using the distort tool. I changed the color of the background because one thing I got wrong in the original was the color of the sky. On the ground, the sky is not a pretty blue, but it's all kinds of gray, tans, and browns. I also isolated Chthoni and Zonka's heads in I also isolated Chthoni and Zonka's heads in a separate canvas because I wasn't really sure if the heads were the same size. Another problem with the original. I think they're roughly the same size now. For Chthoni's portal, I just took scraps from the other panel and Frankenstein them together because I was not drawing that all over again. And with that, I think that just about brings us to the end of the speed paint section of our video. Now moving on to closing thoughts. So, redrawing art. Typically when we do it, we redo pieces from years ago, but I think I at least forgot that it doesn't have to be years later to redraw something. It can be from a few weeks ago, a few days ago, hours even. When I finish a drawing, there's a sense of complacency, like this is the end-all be-all of how this thing is going to look, even if it didn't turn out the way I envisioned it in my head. But recently I learned, my dog is drinking water very noisily in the background, I hope you can't tell. But recently I learned that I don't have to settle in my art. If something isn't looking the way I want it to, nothing is stopping me from redrawing it or changing a part of it. This is a little harder to accomplish with traditional art, but whiteout and gluing pieces of paper down have become my best friends as of late. I'm usually way happier with my art when I redraw it, and this time is no different. That's the best part about art. I can smudge my ink, wrinkle the paper while erasing, my lines can turn out wobbly, something can turn out just downright awful, and I'll still wake up the next morning thinking, man, I love art. This piece really took a lot out of me. I'm not used to doing drawings that take so long, but that just incentivized me to spend more time on my drawings so I can get better at it. I posted the finished piece to social media, so if you want to admire it in all its amateur glory, you can find me as @SlickReagan on Twitter and as ReaganSlickOfficial on Tumblr. I also have to shout out two people, John Kakuda on Tumblr and Likey, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, on Twitter. My social media experience wouldn't have been as good without these two wonderful people liking my posts and saying such kind things to me. Please go check them out. That's it for now. I hope I helped at least one person with the subpar tutorial.